Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the wizard class for Arena. So we're going to cover all of the perks and skills, and we'll go over a few builds. If you are interested in anything in specific, check the timestamps. I'll have labeled a few things in there. If that doesn't help you and you don't really find the video too useful or have a more specific or niche question, please shoot me a comment or join the Discord, and I'll try and help you out as much as I can. Alright, so just a quick warning before we start. These videos are more supposed to be just like informational and helpful, but not trusted as a 100%, complete guide. Wizard is one of the classes I have a bit less time in. I've played on multiple, like, I've had multiple accounts and, the playtests and whatnot, so I have played more than it might seem if you look at my account, but I've still played Wizard as one of my least played classes, so just take what I'm saying with a bit of, a grain of salt and consult other sources. But for the most part, it's fairly basic information, so it's not anything too advanced or complicated. But getting straight into it, we will go to perks and skills first. So, the current setup I'm running right now is a 10 spell, meaning we have spell memory 1 and 2 both equipped. This just allows us to equip 5 spells on each wheel. So instead of having like a skill on a secondary and, a set of spells like you might have on Warlock for most builds, you'll have 10 spells in total. So for the perks, we have Mana Surge, Ice Mastery, Fire Mastery, and Quick Chant. Ice Mastery can be swapped out here. The main point of this build, Mana Surge and Quick Chant, are both just DPS boosts. Fire Mastery is amazing in Arena because it provides a 50% physical and magical anti-heal, physical healing being things like bandages, and magical heal being most other sources. And it also increases the duration of burns by 2 seconds, and you get 5% more fire magical damage bonus. So, this is very good because if we look at our spells, Wizard has Zap, Fireball, and Explosion, and these all deal fire damage. As you can see, they apply burn. Ignite does also apply burn, but since this is not a melee wizard build, you don't really need to take this. It's pretty much useless. We're going for a caster wizard for this example here. So Ice Mastery, the second perk, is great because when you cast Ice Bolt and hit someone with it, normally it will just inflict Frostbite for 1 second, which makes them lose 20% move speed bonus and 20% action speed. So if you hit someone with an Ice Bolt when you have Ice Mastery, it will fully freeze them for half a second, which is really good. You can really keep people off you that way, even if it's like a high Magi Res Barb. He can't really hit you if he's unable to move for a couple seconds if you keep hitting him with Ice Bolts. We've got, like I said, Mana Surge and Quick Chant are both damage boosting. Quick Chant is just 15% spellcasting speed, very nice boost, and Mana Surge used to be a bit worse of a perk, but honestly, it's a pretty reliable solid perk now, as Will is a lot worse than it used to be a while ago, so you don't want to build too much Will. And this is a nice way to compensate a bit, especially because True Magic and True Fizz is out of the game. So that's all of the perks for this build, and skills obviously. The spells are just going to be everything but Magic Lock, Ignite, and Chain Lightning. Technically, you could swap some of these. Say, for example, if you didn't really care too much about rogues, you could swap Light Orb out. I don't personally think Chain Lightning's very good, because you will be hitting your teammates and yourself a lot. If you're not used to it, it is quite difficult to use. And to be honest, it only deals 30 damage with 100% scaling. It's not very good unless you're hitting their entire team with it. A single fireball is 20 with 100% scaling, and obviously you've got the burn. You got quite a bit of burn there, especially from Fire Mastery, and the anti-heal, so you're doing quite a lot more there. And obviously you get twice as many. So I personally wouldn't take Chain Lightning. Ignite obviously is usable if you wanted to buff teammates with it, but not very good, and Magic Lock is very obviously useless. So if you're playing 10 spell, you only have 13 different spells to choose from anyways, and I'd suggest this as the optimal setup. Like I said, you can swap Light Orb out if you really want to, but this is a pretty good setup. And just to be clear, if you were to cast Ignite on someone, the scaling for Ignite, it's whatever the person you've casted on, it's whatever the stats they have. It's not vindictive of your stats, so if you had plus 10 magic damage, for example, it would not apply to them with those stats. It would simply apply the base Ignite and then multiply it by whatever their stats are. So it's not great, but it is a nice damage boost if maybe you're putting it on a like a BOC Warlock or something like that. Who knows? So as far as this build goes, that's about it for perks and skills and spells. It's quite simple. You can, like I said, swap out Ice Mastery. Technically, most of these, there's no like very specific thing you need to make it work. I'd always suggest bringing Fire Mastery, as it is genuinely just one of the best wizard perks for Arena. The anti-heal is just so incredibly good. There's so many support comps and, well, I mean, generally ways that people can heal in Arena that this is amazing. Quick Chant is another pretty solid must-have for most builds. Not all, but most, because 50% spellcasting speed is just quite a lot. Mana Surge is pretty similar to just Quick Chant, it's just a nice damage boost. And then Ice Mastery could be swapped for probably Spell Overload if you wanted to maybe. The issue with Spell Overload is that it doesn't just reduce your spell memory, it also reduces your spellcasting speed because it takes away 20% of your knowledge. So you lose some spellcasting speed. So it's a bit iffy on that end, but you do get more spells. So, like 6 fireballs and explosions, for example, instead of 4. It's not a bad perk. I just don't think you need it per se if you're running 10 spell, because that's the benefit of 10 spell, right? You have all of these different spells. So if you run out of fireballs, you've got explosions, you've got zaps, you've got, well, maybe not magic missiles, those are more for mobs, but you've got ice bolts, you've got lightning strike. You've got plenty of options. You could still grab it though if you wanted to. Ice Shield is another nice one because it will give you 20 armor rating just all the time base, and it will inflict frostbite for half a second if someone tries to hit you with a melee. Um, and Frostbite obviously just means they lose 20% move speed bonus and 20% action speed, but it does have a cooldown, so it can't proc constantly. But that does give you a nice little menial, like, 2.6% PDR. It's not amazing, but it does keep them off you with the Frostbite effect. It's kind of like having Tangle Threads, a bit different obviously, but it does make them attack slower as well. Now, Arcane Mastery is also another decent one. It makes all arcane spells cast half a second faster, and you gain 5% arcane magical damage bonus. The issue with this is that all this affects is just Magic Missile and Invis. Oh, and Magic Lock, I suppose. The pink ones are all the arcane ones. The issue here is that obviously Magic Lock is basically useless, and Invisibility and Magic Missile are good, but not that good. Being able to cast Invis really fast is nice, but the other part, 5% arcane magical damage bonus, not only doesn't apply to Invis, but it also does very little for Magic Missile. So it's not the best perk. Nowadays, it used to be quite good, but Arcane Feedback is terrible. I wouldn't pick this under any circumstance. It just gives you 3% spellcasting speed and 3% arcane magical damage bonus, which can stack up to 5 times, giving you a maximum of 15% of each when you deal damage with an arcane spell. So this quite literally only applies to Magic Missile, which is not very good. I mean, you could, cast Magic Missile, hit something 5 times, and then cast an Invis, but I was more referring to the fact that you can only deal arcane damage via Magic Missile. So that's a pretty useless perk, and I wouldn't really advise taking it in any build. Staff Mastery is just for Bonk Wizard builds. We'll cover that in a little bit. Obviously, for this build, it's quite useless. A Reactive Shield, again, is a bit more for Bonk Wizard builds. Those usually go together quite well. Um, it just gives you a shield for 3 seconds, and it'll absorb up to 15 total damage, and it has a shortish cooldown. This is not very good if you're not going to be playing a melee wizard, because 3 seconds is not very long if you're getting peppered by ranged. Usually you'll get hit by a bow, and then 3 seconds is over, they'll probably hit you after the shield expires. Doesn't do a whole lot, and it's only 15 damage. Honestly, even in Bonk Wizard builds, you can sort this out. Right now, it's just kind of a bit of a weakish perk. It's not amazing, but it's not that bad either. 15 free HP if it works out. And the last one would be Melt. This just makes the target lose 15% PDR and 10% projectile damage reduction for 2 seconds when you hit them with any fire damage. So again, this is a bit of an iffy one. It's the same as Fire Mastery. It applies to Zap, Fireball, Explosion, and Ignite. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing, as obviously if you are building a melee build, you could use it with Ignite, and then it's kind of okay. The issue is, with Bonk Wizard, you're using a staff that's quite slow swinging, and Ignite, obviously, you need to hit them first to apply the Ignite, and Melt isn't going to apply until after you've hit them, so your first swing won't actually gain the benefits of Melt, it'll simply apply Melt. So your second swing then gets the benefits of Melt, provided it doesn't take too long to actually hit them. So overall, it's an okay-ish perk. I wouldn't use it personally. You won't see that many people using it either. I wouldn't personally use it or recommend it. And that's about it for the perks. The spells, I'll just run over them like individually quickly. So Magic Missile will fire 10 homing missiles. They don't have that good homing. It's just a slight sort of curve, and sometimes they'll lock on and sort of spin around a target. They each deal 10 base arcane magical damage with half scaling. And for this spell, it's a focus spell, which means that you need to stay still whilst casting it. Otherwise, it will cancel the spell, and you will not get your spell charge back. So obviously, you can maybe you're using it to take out like a skeleton archer. You fire a volley off, and before you can finish the spell, there's an arrow heading towards you, so you side strafe to dodge the arrow. It will cancel the spell. Obviously, any projectiles that are already out will remain. They don't get deleted or anything. It'll just stop firing. This spell is usually a PvE spell. It's mostly used to quick clear PvE, it's quite effective. The only real use you'll have in PvP is spraying down a hallway to try and stop people from running down it, or just trying to be a pest at range, as Wizard doesn't really have any options for like substantial range. Ice Bolt can go pretty far, but obviously it's a very slow traveling projectile, so it's very hard to snipe someone from across, like, the Goblin Hall or something. It doesn't really have much use in that. So basically, just try and keep to PvE use with Magic Missile. It's not really too great for PvP. Ice Bolt will just deal 30 magic damage with 100% scaling, ice magic, and it will also inflict Frostbite for 1 second, which again makes them lose 20% of their movement speed and their action speed. Now, this is a great spell for just putting out some damage at mid to close range. Again, if you have the Ice Mastery perk, then it will allow you to fully just stop someone in their tracks, making it way easier for you to keep them at range and keep slamming them with the Ice Bolts. A pretty great spell overall, even without the perk. So then we have Zap. It will deal 18 light magic damage with 100% scaling, and it will burn the target for a second. So the burn effect means that the target takes 1 fire damage with half scaling. This is obviously amplified by Fire Mastery, gain 5% fire magical damage bonus, and the duration of applied burns are increased by 2 seconds. Obviously the anti-heal as well, but this means that this actually burns for 3 seconds instead of 1 second. This is also a hit scan spell, meaning that when you cast it, as soon as it goes out, it will hit exactly what you are looking at, exactly where your crosshair is, sorry. So as long as you're not aiming bad, you can really thread the needle. This is great for if your front line's fighting their front line. Actually, that's a great point. What you don't want to do in that scenario is throw a fireball at them, because although you might think it's worth it to trade your teammate to take theirs out, you never really know what's going on, and it's always better to just cast Zap to try and, sort of thread the needle if your teammate's a bit in the way. And I mean, it's pretty good consistent damage. It'll give them anti-heal. If you have Fire Mastery, it's a great spell overall. Comes out quick and everything. Fireball, 20 direct fire magic damage with 100% scaling, and it also does 10 splash fire magical damage with 100% scaling, knocking back nearby targets and inflicting burn for 2 seconds, which is heightened to 4 with Fire Mastery. For this burn, it actually does more than Zap. Zap does 1 with half scaling. Fireball does 3 with half scaling. So this is obviously an amazing spell for just dealing general damage. It doesn't matter if the opponent has a shield, if they're really fast, really slow. It's a great, great way of dealing damage. And if you direct people, it does more damage. If you headshot people, it does more damage. Splashing it, try and aim for their legs if you're going to splash them. Try not to aim directly to the side of them on purpose. Try to actually hit them, as it will do a bit more damage. But even if you do hit the floor, it will still deal damage to them. And then we have Explosion. So as soon as you cast it, a little explosion, like glowy, expandy ball thing, will appear wherever you've cast it. If you miss them, if they're like too far away or something, it will just appear mid-air and stay there, and then explode after a couple seconds. Or if you hit them with it, it will stick to them and then explode after the 3 seconds. So it does 23 fire magical damage, 100% scaling, and it will apply burn for 2 seconds within a 1 meter area. So it does have a little bit of AoE. And the burn is the same as the Fireball, 3 damage with half scaling. So this is another great general damage spell like Fireball. Again, obviously the anti-heal, and it has a little bit of AoE, so if you stick it to someone and they are running at you, do be careful, because even though you might be able to finish them off with your melee or something, they will still hit you with the AoE, so you'll still take damage. Also, do be aware of this. If you're flinging it onto a melee who's fighting your melee, you're going to be damaging your own melee with the explosions. So stick to a different spell if you can. But it's a pretty good spell for overall just general, like, 1v1. Then we have Invis. This will just grant invisibility for 4 seconds to either yourself or whoever you cast it at. Be careful, as you can invis dead bodies with this and mobs. The target will also gain 5% move speed bonus. So it's a nice way to get the hell out of there. You cast it on yourself and then just try and dodge left, right, strafe around a bit, and you can honestly just scoot straight past people, and they won't notice if your movement's good. Haste is another buff. It will grant 5% move speed and 10% action speed, 10% spellcasting speed for 6 seconds. This is same as Invis. You can cast it on other people or yourself. So if you cast Haste and Invis on yourself, you're gaining 10% move speed bonus in total, which is quite nice. These are both great for sending in your melee or getting yourself out of a sticky situation. Haste is obviously 10% spellcasting speed is a nice little damage boost as well. Lightning Strike will basically just create a little AoE ring. It's a little bit like Holy Strike, but instead of, a Holy Light with a flashbang, this one will cool down a bolt of lightning that strikes the targeted area. This will apply the Electrified debuff, which makes them lose 20% move speed bonus as well. It deals 30 base lightning magic damage with 100% scaling. and the electrified lasts for 1 second. So this is great for slower targets, especially if they're chasing you. You can play it right like sort of at your feet-ish if they're really close, and it has about like a second or a second and a half-ish delay, so it doesn't come down instantly. So even if you play it on yourself, as you're moving away, it'll come down like a second later or something. So it's great for pulling people off yourself. Light Orb is entirely just for getting rogues out of invis. If they pass by or if you cast it onto them or whatever, in a certain like AoE nearby the light orb, it will reveal invis. So you don't need to bring this, but it is a nice spell to have. It is also quite nice to have spell overload with light orb because you only get 4. You get 6 if you have overload, and 4 obviously isn't that much, but they do stay for a while. And they do go quite fast. So if you're casting them, try and sort of stick them onto walls or floors usually. And last but not least, slow. This will just slow the target for 40% for 2 seconds, which is a very substantial amount of slow. This is honestly an amazing, really underutilized spell. You won't see that many people in lower brackets use it, but it is a really good spell. It cuts their movement speed by almost half for 2 whole seconds, so it's really good for stopping someone who's trying to chase you or peeling for a teammate, because if they're getting jumped by a rogue and you can hit the rogue with slow quick enough, they can very easily just walk on out of there. Really good. Also good if you want to maybe catch someone that's running away for your teammate. It's basically kind of like Bind, but better. And that's about all the spells. Oh, actually, I could do these 3 as well. So these 3 here as well. Magic Lock will just lock anything like a chest or a door or something for 10 seconds. That's about it. It doesn't really do anything else. We have Ignite, which sets the target's weapon on fire for 12 seconds, 5 additional fire magic damage with half scaling, and inflict burning for 1 second. This is the same burn effect as Zap, 1 with half scaling. So obviously this is not the best burn effect if you don't have Fire Mastery. This shouldn't really be brought if you're not going to be using like a melee wizard build. You could bring it over Light Orb like that. That's a pretty good setup. You probably shouldn't use this over any of these spells unless maybe Light Orb if you're not doing a melee wizard build, because it's usually just for a self buff, and you can obviously apply it to teammates, but it's not so good on teammates because, like I said earlier, it is affected by their scaling and not your scaling. So it's only 5 magic damage and, a 1 second burn that does barely anything to them. So it's not that great if you're applying it on like a fighter that has no magic damage. It's pretty good if you're applying it on like a Demon Slayer fighter or something, but that's usually for melee wizard. Chain lightning, so this just fires out like a lightning bolt with fairly short-ish range. That will deal 30 damage with 100% scaling and electrocuting the target for 1 second, which will make them lose 20% move speed. And the gimmick of chain lightning is that if any targets are close enough, so within an 8-meter area, then it will chain to them, and it'll do this up to 3 times. It doesn't chain to a target if it was previously transferred to, and it can transfer to the caster. So as I was saying earlier, you can and will hit yourself with it. It is quite risky to use, but it is really good if you have like a druid, they cast Treant, you can chain the Treant, and although you can do this with other things like Sorcerer's Golem or even the Warlock's Hydra, it's not as good because the Treant will actively walk towards the enemy and it will try and get really, really close to them. The other 2 don't really move so much, obviously. You can also use like a high MDR target, like say a barbarian, that is your teammate, to run in there and chain off of them. This is not super effective anymore. I wouldn't really recommend it unless they are like maybe 75% cap. It's a decent spell, but it is a little over nerfed maybe. It's not so great. So that's all of the spells, that's all of the perks and skills. So moving on to the gear. Now I've just got a random crappy crystal sword, doesn't really matter. If you can just roll some fizz power on there, that obviously helps. You're not ever really going to be using this, so I wouldn't recommend caring too much about it. The spellbook is the Requiem of the Fairy. This is one of the best, if not the best, casting catalysts for Arena, because what it'll do is it'll give you 5% Magipen like the normal book, but it'll also give you 5% magic damage bonus as well, which is really nice because the max you can roll, I think, is like 4, maybe 5%. I do believe it's 4 though. So that's quite a nice boost. I've just grabbed like a cheaper one that I found, so not the best rolls, but you just want to get some magic power and spellcasting speed on there. For the last roll, I just have armor rating because, to be honest, it's not a terrible roll to have on your book. Obviously, if this wasn't a Requiem of the Fairy, I would have magical damage bonus on there, but because it is, it already has the base, so I can't roll that, and there's not really any other stat you'd want, so I just went for armor rating. This is a pretty good, if not the best pick, like I said, because the spellbook has better move speed penalty than the Crystal Ball, but it does have lower damage. However, it does comp the damage a little bit with the magic pen. Obviously, not everyone you're attacking is going to have MDR, but it will help if they do. Um, Honestly, The -5 move speed that you're going to be taking for the 2 additional magic damage that the Crystal Ball will give you isn't really super worth it, especially because the Crystal Ball has a slower casting animation, which means you are going to be actually casting spells faster with a book. Not the wind-up animation, where you'll see the bar going up, but the actual, like, release of the spell. This is actually why casting with a Crystal Sword and a Staff is very bad, because when you cast with a Staff, it has quite a long sort of, very, like, exaggerated animation, and I mean the Crystal Sword even more exacerbated. Um, and obviously the Crystal Sword doesn't even have any additional damage on it, or magic healing or anything, so try and stick to casting with a book if you can, but a Crystal Ball is still, it's a fine substitute, but the book it tends to be the best. Then for the rest of the gear, we just have a Radiant Cloak. Most of this gear is just going to be stacking knowledge, just to be clear. Stacking knowledge, spellcasting speed, additional magic damage, that kind of stuff. Oh, and obviously, some will and magic power and whatnot. So we've just got spellcasting speed, additional magic damage, and magic pen. Honestly, not a terrible roll here, so I grabbed that. It's a 5% max roll. Next level piece, we've just got magic pen, spellcasting speed, additional magic. This one isn't this, obviously. The rolls could be a little higher, and it's only a max. It's only a +5 instead of a 6, but it's good enough. Leather cap with knowledge magical damage bonus and additional magic damage. Remember to always be grabbing additional magic damage on your hat, as you should be with melee on the gloves, additional fizz. If just in case you didn't know, additional fizz rolls on all of the jewelry, cape, and your gloves. For magic, it doesn't roll on the gloves, it rolls on the hat instead. But obviously, all of the jewelry it still rolls on. So all of your jewelry should have +1 additional magic damage. And for the rings, magic power, again, not the best. They could have rolled a bit higher, but it's good enough. And Ring of Wisdom, Crystal Frost Ring, these are both quite good rings. I was originally going to go for double Ring of Wisdom, but my knowledge is actually 42 right now, which is over the cap, well, the soft cap. So any more, and it's quite diminishing returns, it's not worth it, so I went with a Crystal Frost Ring instead. 1 will, 2 vigor, pretty good. And just in case you're curious, when you are below 40, each point of knowledge will give you 2% spellcasting speed. When you hit 40, the next point of knowledge you invest into there will only be giving you 1%. So it's imperative that you make sure you stick to about 40 exactly if you can, or a couple lower is fine, a couple higher isn't the end of the world either. Then we've got the padded leggings because they are only -2 move speed, and they give us vigor. I do have knowledge and casting speed on there. Again, armor rating was a bit of an off-roll, but I just sort of brought these for pretty cheap, a couple hundred on the market, so I didn't mind too much. The Arcane Gloves, again, the knowledge is low rolled, but spellcasting speed and 3 vigor, it's pretty good. These, by the way, can be, you could take rawhides or reinforceds. The Arcane Gloves are just, again, I got like a nice couple hundred gold deal on them, and Agi is kind of bad, yes, but it's still giving me at least a point of move speed, so they are good enough for me. They're obviously 2 well is also nice. We've got the low boots for the knowledge, and then I've got vigor, spellcasting speed, and dex on them. Again, a lot of this stuff is kind of a little random with the rolls, but I just kind of got them for pretty cheap, so I didn't mind too much. And besides, dexterity isn't a horrible stat for wizards, as you do actually need a little bit of action speed. You should try and be at least a few percent in the positive, because it will affect your spellcasting via the animation. As I said earlier, with the Crystal Sword and such having terrible animations making it actually cast really slowly, you do want to try and have at least positive by a few points action speed, just so you can, get that little boost. So I've got a bit of dex, spellcasting speed, and vigor on those, and then obviously you've seen the rings and the jewelry. That's all. So for the vestments, I've just got vigor, magic power, and magic damage bonus. Again, not the best rolls. I got a good deal on them though, so I don't mind too much. So the overall sort of theme is try and build uh, a little bit of will, not too much. Don't focus too much into it, but try and get at least maybe 25. Um, yeah, about 25. You don't really need too much will. You can forego your spellcasting speed a bit and focus a bit more on will if you're maybe doing like an instacast, or you're just trying to grab like spell overload, and you're just trying to focus on more hitting hard and slow rather than faster. That's fine too. It tends to be generally better to focus a bit more on spellcasting and get out more spells, especially if you're a 10 spell though. So I've gone with a little bit of will on, like a couple of these rolls will have will and the Mystic Vestments themselves, but apart from that, I don't actually have very much will. It's mostly focused into knowledge. So that is just for the casting speed. So you can grab a bit of knowledge, but mostly try and focus on getting vigor to keep yourself alive, and spellcasting speed slash knowledge gemmed on or just on the base wherever you can. Obviously, grab your 5 additional magic damage on your jewelry, cape, and hat. That is very important. And then the rest, like I said, just try and grab spellcasting speed, vigor, knowledge, that kind of magical damage bonus, magic power, that kind of stuff. You can grab a little bit of magic pen if you want, but it's not too important. And for substitutes, you could do the hood instead of the cap, maybe, if you want a bit more vigor. Honestly, the leather cap tends to be one of the best options. I would choose it if you could. It's got nice headshot damage reduction, bit of armor rating, and it's not too heavy. And vigor, again, being a little tankier as a wizard is a really good thing. It's not essential technically, but it'll lessen the chance you get two-shot by a longbow, so it's quite nice. So as far as chess pieces go, you've got the Mystic Vestments, the Oracle Robe. Those are going to be the best two choices you can get. Um, don't fall for the Ruby Silver Mystic Vestments. They're not worth it. It's just like 1% PDR or something, but you will be paying a lot more for them, especially if you want good rolls on them. So it's not worth it. Just stick to regular Mystic Vestments or an Oracle Robe. I'd suggest you pick one of the two, though, unless you're doing a melee build, in which if it's staff, probably go for like a padded. But moving on to the leggings, we have cloth pants, padded leggings, heavy leathers you could do. Any of those three really work. Heavies are, again, a bit more for a melee build, but technically if you wanted to be a bit more of a casty tanker, I suppose, I'd really just advise sticking to padded leggings though. Regular leather leggings do give will, but they are a bit heavier, so they're a bit iffy there. The gloves, like I said, arcane, rawhide, reinforced are going to be the best bet. Low boots, light foots, maybe laced. Maybe stick to light foots or low boots though. Leather cap, like I said, the hood as well. I'd stick to one of the two. Next of piece is probably going to be your best bet for your necklace, or potentially if you want the Phoenix Joker. Having the +5 or 6 health is generally a bit better though, however. The rings, just Crystal Frost rings, or Rings of Wisdom, or Will rings, one of those three typically, and the cape, Radiant Cloak, or Will Cloak, or a Vigor Cloak. And for the melee, like I said, it doesn't matter too much, especially if you have magic missiles, but the Crystal Sword's typically going to be the better option, and Requiem of the Fairy, obviously, for your spellbook, I'd advise. And that about sums it up for this build. A quick little nugget of information on how to play the build. You want to be quite focused on being like a backline caster. You can come up front and sort of, take the aggro, but try not to, if there's a lot of range damage going out, try to play really tactfully and position well. Try and splash with your fireballs and explosions, and then when they get a bit closer, switch to maybe ice bolts or zaps if they're close. Try and use your spells on your teammates, like your buffs and whatnot on your teammates as well as yourself. Try not to just hold them for yourself alone, and try not to use them all on your teammates. Try and maintain a healthy balance. And that's about it, really. It has a bit of a skill ceiling, but honestly, it just matters how well you are making decisions. It's a pretty good build, though. It's one of the more fun ones, and I definitely recommend it. Alright, so the second build we'll be taking a look at is Bonk Wizard. The build is essentially just a melee wizard that uses magic staff as their primary. I like to bring a spellbook as well, just because obviously you're not going to be in, melee range constantly, and using the spellbook is far superior to a staff in casting. These skills just being one spell memory and arcane shield. Now, the reasoning for these perks, and if you can change them, is Ice Shield is obviously quite a must-have. That extra little boosted armor rating is giving me a couple percent PDR, but also Frostbite makes this build a lot better because when they're losing 20% move speed and action speed from hitting you, it makes them that much more locked into a fight, giving them that much less chance to run away because they're losing a nice chunk of move speed for half a second, and their second swing on you is going to be a lot slower. Fire Mastery is obviously quite a must-have as well, as Ignite, being one of your main spells you're going to be working around here, will do a bit more damage because of the 5% damage, and the burn will last longer, but also the anti-heal you apply makes you really good against certain things, like for example, buff ball with like a druid or cleric healing them, or even just a fighter with second wind or something. Reactive Shield is just to really just up your HP a little, but this can definitely be swapped out, and to be honest, I think I tend to prefer swapping it out, as obviously when you have these four perks, you're missing out on Quick Charm, and you're missing out on Mana Surge. So your Magic Power bonus and your spellcasting speed are going to go down a bit. Obviously, if you don't care too much about your spellcasting speed, you could even further lessen it by grabbing Spell Overload to get that boost in spells, but this isn't super well advised. As you can see, I go from 54 all the way down to 38.8. So it's not horrifically low, but sub 40% isn't really very good, so I wouldn't really advise it. You can though, you definitely can. Typically, I'd probably just take Quick Jaunt though. That puts me up to a nice 69%, which is a very nice amount, especially because this is quite melee-sided. Arcane Shield is just a skill that gives you plus 15 shield points, I suppose, with half scaling. That'll protect you from any damage source, and it'll last for 12 seconds. And when the maximum amount of absorbed like damage has been reached, the shield will release an arcane explosion that deals 5 base with 100% scaling magical damage to enemy targets within a 2-meter radius of you. So this will not apply, as in the explosion, if it just runs out of time. It does have to expire via the damage being, absorbed to the maximum. But it is a pretty nice little shield to keep you from going down too quickly, and it does do a nice little touch of damage as well. Especially because obviously A, it has AoE, and B, this scales with 100% scaling. So if you're holding your staff, that's an additional 8 damage onto it. You have all of the +5 from your gear, so then you're suddenly doing 18 damage instead of 5. That's fairly substantial. And alongside that, for the spells, we're going to go with Ignite, Zap, Fireball, Explosion, and Haste. Haste being swappable for Invis or another if you want to. Haste is just a nice one because you can pop it when enemies are in mid-range, and it'll give them either two options. They either back away from you, and that boost in movement speed and spellcasting speed gives you a nice opportunity to chase them down a little bit or get some damage on them, or they run at you, and in which case you've got a movement speed boost and 10% action speed boost. So it's good for meleeing or casting. It's really great because it's super versatile. But like I said, you could grab Invis or any other spell really. And that's about it for the perks and skills. The build itself, obviously you need a magic staff. There is the Spell Plunderer Rod, which is just a normal purple staff, but when you hit things with your melee, you'll gain some spell charge back. So it's actually really good, but it's quite expensive. So if you have the spare money put aside for that, maybe go ahead and buy a Spell Plunderer Rod instead. It's a lesser artifact. Then we've just got a Leather Cat. Now some of this is the same as for the caster build, but most of it's swapped out. But some of the stuff like the Leather Cap, this is actually a different Leather Cap. It's just knowledge, strength, and additional. Valiant Attire is pretty good. It does slow you down a decent bit, but dexterity and vigor with a nice armor rating is always great. Heavy leathers, they do slow you down a bit again, but a nice high armor rating with vigor is great. Rivetids for strength. Something to note actually, wizards have very low strength by base, so even with all of this strength I have on me right now, I'm only at 16. Now, this isn't super, super influential, but I do only have 1% Fizz power, which isn't amazing. If you can, try and build at least maybe 5 or upwards. But at the end of the day, it's not the biggest deal in the world, as you will be doing a good chunk of magic damage because of Staff Mastery, which I should probably explain actually. So the way Staff Mastery works is it applies a separate instance of damage every time you swing your staff. So it's kind of like, say, the Demon's Gleave, for example. It deals 2 types of damage. You have the main melee damage from swinging your staff, that is influenced by the 33 weapon damage of the staff, and then you have the secondary source that starts off at a 2 base magic weapon damage, and it will scale with all of the magic damage and whatnot you have, and the magic damage on the staff itself. So it's pretty good. You'll end up dealing a good bit extra damage with it. And again, it is magic damage, so you're dealing regular fizz with the staff itself and then magic with that. So it's pretty great additional damage. There is a second variant of Melee Wizard, and that would be the Rondel Dagger and Crystal Ball. You can obviously use either one of these special crystal balls. Don't use the title one, obviously, that one's terrible, but the Cyclops Eye or the other one that does one true, either of those are also great. I wouldn't so much recommend that build though, as right now it's not the best. It was more better with True Fizz in the game, because the True Magi and True Fizz was really nice for it, but it's not so great nowadays. So I would stick to Bonk Wizard if you're gonna do a melee wizard build, but honestly, Caster Wizard is kind of on top in Arena right now, so if you're gonna do Wizard, consider doing Caster. If you do want to do a melee wizard, probably do Bonk. There's not too much other variety, however. If you want to play a wizard, it's really just down to either Caster Wizard or Bonk Wizard. Now, there is a bit of variety in the sense that, for example, my Caster Wizard was using 10 spell. You could use Arcane Shield or Instant Cast, or Intense Focus, which is just an instant cast, basically. You pop this skill, and then as soon as you cast the spell, there's like no charging time. The bar just goes up instantly, and the only thing you have to wait for is the casting animation. Obviously, never use meditation in Arena, it's terrible, but apart from that, basically your options are either Bonk Wizard, which you're obviously going to want to take Arcane Shield with, or you do 10 Spell Wizard or 5 Spell Wizard with Intense Focus. So there's only really 3 different builds for Wizard right now. You could use the Rondel Dagger and Crystal Ball, but it's not that good, so I would recommend sticking to one of the 2/3 builds. But that's about it for this build, to be honest. I'll just run over the gear really quickly so you can see it and pause if you need to. But it's basically just stacking health and PDR with, a bit of the regular knowledge and magic damage stuff, and it works pretty great. You just want to keep them at a distance when you need to with your, fireballs and whatnot, slash them, try and intimidate them, get some nice chip on them, and then try not to charge too hard into melee. Try and use your melee as a tool to dissuade them from charging into you, and also as a tool to finish off low HP melees. It's less of a main thing, and it's more of a secondary. You want to try and balance your ranged and melee as much as possible, hence why I like to keep my spellcasting speed at least a decent number. Honestly, it's pretty good for this build here because I do obviously have Quick Chant on. Even without Quick Chant, it would still be decent. So just try and bear that in mind. Try not to lean too hard into the melee or into the casting. Try and keep a nice equilibrium between the two. And that's about it, really. There's not too much else to it. Alright, so this is just a little clip to demonstrate effective ranging. So essentially, the Barbarian is coming down the middle, the Rogue is backed, and the Fighter is flanking. So I slow, zap, zap, and Fireball. You'll notice the Lightning Strike obviously slowed him down a lot. And then Air Bard maintained good distancing, making sure not to push. He waited till after the Barbarian was dead. Then I finish off the Rogue with 2 explosions and an Ice Bolt, and he's protected us from the Fighter from behind, doing his job very well. This next clip here is just about basically being aware. If you play Wizard, you're going to need to be really aware of your surroundings. So this is the second round, and I know they have a melee Sork, so I know he's on my right there, and I'll see out of the corner of my eye a bubble in a second. I'll see that, he's about to teleport because he's popped up his bubble. So I maintain good distance with my melee BOC Warlock, so he gets scared off. I do notice he got hit once or twice by my Warlock, so I pressure him with Ice Bolt into a Fireball, and my Warlock finishes him off. Then I splash the Wizard, and go to splash again, but the Wizard's gone, so I go for Chase. I do not see the Wizard, but I do see the Barbarian. I don't really have any info on him, so I'm being a bit careful. I'm just holding the slow around the corner. I'm assuming he's low because he's throwing mollies at me and choosing to try and wrap around instead of charging me. So I slow him into 2 zaps and he's dead, and my Warlock had finished off the Wizard in the meantime. This clip is just to demonstrate how brutally effective you can be if you bait distance right and time things. So I'll notice there are no teammates on the right, so they're probably flanking around. So I get ready to run back with a slow. Ice Bolt the head, does a lot of damage. Ice Bolt his teammates, getting ready, yep, he comes around, and I back up. Ice Bolt his teammate into a Fireball, and the Ranger gives up and win the round. For this clip, again, it's just a nice pressuring sort of example. Obviously, I do get an Earthquake from my Cleric. Even without the Earthquake, most of those magic missiles would have hit because it's slow. So I keep up the pressure. I notice he goes around the corner, so I instead switch my target. I see him go down to a mob. I back up for some healing, and then I go back in. I do miss my explosions, especially on the Ranger there, but I don't mind being too close because I know he's going to pull his melee out like that, so I can Ice Bolt him for free. And then we just finish off the Warlock. Notice how I slam my Ice Bolt into the wall instead of trying to finesse around the Ranger. It's a lot better to just waste a spell than it is to hit your teammate. In this clip, this is just about, again, spatial awareness. So I see the Fighter, that's my primary target because they have low MDR. But I do see the Ranger and Fighter are sticking together, whereas the Barb is going round, sort of cutting me off. So I try and get in a Lightning Strike, I miss it, but then I go in for an Invis to sweep around him, and then I go for Ice Bolts because I know he's going to be cocky, slow him down, and then I go on the offense instead of backing up. It's very low, but I miss my last Ice Bolt and Zap, so then I start to pressure the Fighter instead, hitting 2 Fireballs and an Explosion. This clip is just to show you util being used properly. So I'll bounce him with a Fireball to kill his momentum, into the Invis to dodge him, then I'll Invis my Warlock to help him get away from the Fighter, Invising myself to pull the Fighter off myself, and then I'll pull Slow out to slow the Fighter down, helping him get away quicker, and then it's just a bit of back and forth, and we eventually win. I do miss my Lightnings, this is why I don't typically use it very much, it's a little finicky, and it doesn't have too far of range. And there's my Warlock's getting into a scuffle, So I come up to help them, aiming for zaps instead of a fireball or explosion in the initial, and we win. Alright, so in conclusion, if you are playing a purebred caster, the most important thing you need to think about is your positioning and awareness. And unfortunately, you kind of do need your team to work with you. So if you're playing Arena with some people you know, this is obviously quite easy. Just tell them what to do. If you have a front line, for example, tell them don't dive into the enemy unless I've softened them or at least killed one, that kind of thing. However, changing the subject. Now, obviously, I didn't show any Bonk Wizard or 5-spell Wizard gameplay, and that's just because, to be quite honest, Bonk Wizard will be played quite similarly to regular Wizard. The only real difference is that you are able to consistently melee when they get too close, instead of just trying to invis your way out of there or use an ice bolt to freeze them in place with the perk. Something like that is instead replaced by more of the, push into them kind of thing. So you'd be playing pretty similarly, trying to be like a fairly regular wizard. And then if they're getting a bit too close, or you need to defend a more squishy backline, you pull out the staff, you pop ignite, and you do a lot of damage. And you're quite tanky with the shield as well. As far as 5-spell concerns, you probably want to grab Spell Overload if you're running 5-spell. Again, you don't need to necessarily, but it definitely is better advised to grab Spell Overload. And I'd advise just going Instacast. If you're gonna go 5-spell, it's probably because of Instacast. Having Arcane Shield isn't worth dropping 5 spells. Um, and if you're gonna take Arcane Shield, it should only really be for Bonk. But equally, you could take it for 5-spell if you really wanted to. It's up to you. Alright, so that'll about do it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or maybe like a critique about something I said, please leave a comment down below. Please do try and keep it respectful. Or if you want more detailed help on maybe like some gear checking or something like that, uh, maybe join the Discord and I'll try and help you out to the best of my extent. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.